Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and what a day to be talking about stablecoins. We've got 19 minutes on the clock, so we're going to jump right into it. First, massive congrats to Walter on the amazing announcement today and the partnership between Paxos and Standard Chartered. It's really great to see all of these partnerships that are coming out of ADFW. So tell us a bit more about what you're seeing in your world, how you see the future of the stablecoin space evolving, and what's happening with the landscape, as well as from a regulatory perspective, particularly in this region.
Well, we really see stablecoins as just changing the way money moves, and money is used in so many different ways. And you can just spend a couple of days at this conference having conversations, and they range from trade financing to retail payments to B2B payments to remittances, and we see the real acceleration of the expansion of stablecoin usage beyond crypto trading and DeFi, both of which are important, but far into the rest of the economy and ultimately into all of the ways we use money today. We also see at the same time huge changes happening in the regulatory environment that's enabling that.
Fantastic. So moving to you, Fuse provides digital assets as a service, but then you also have your OTC desk. So why do you see stablecoins as critical, and particularly in the Middle East, where you've been a champion of this being the next big hub for innovation?
Yeah, thank you. Look, so we're super excited about this. So what we've seen is that across, Middle East, Africa, and Turkey, stablecoins are, really moving very quickly. So I think, first of all, stepping back globally, if you look at Q2, the total stablecoin volume was about $8.5 trillion, double, Visa, right? So there's a lot of demand for this all across the world. Specifically in this part of the world, what we've seen is that if you go to certain markets such as, Pakistan, Egypt, Turkey, people are buying, stablecoins only to kind of hedge because their currencies are falling so quickly, and it's hard to get really hard cash. And in some other markets, Lebanon, Nigeria, people are using it as a form of, a payment as well, right? It drives efficiency, it's cross-border, interoperable. And what we see is more and more as we push digitization forward, we're very much skipping over some of the traditional networks around Visa and MasterCard and SWIFT, and really using this as like a global settlement layer.
Fantastic. And then, okay, moving to how we want to hear about what you're doing as well with Changer, a leading crypto and digital asset custodian in Abu Dhabi. How are you approaching stablecoins? What is that connection? How do you see the kind of fiat on and off ramps as well? And then how are you approaching integration as we look across the ecosystem?
Sure. Thanks for inviting. Actually, it's actually a very exciting moment, as we have seen the news yesterday with the official announcement of the stablecoins in the country. And it's really probably there's to be more, I think, ecosystem to be built up. Third is Changer. We are a firstly ADGM regulated virtual asset service provider. As just the license, we are able to do custody and virtual asset exchange. So that's actually two things we are looking at, but it's more than that. So we're talking about different stablecoins. One of the biggest, I think, use case is payment. If you have read, I think, the report by one of the major banks, is actually probably the first killer app in terms of the crypto or blockchain technology in the last 12 years, and that's actually payment. I think this is actually going to revolutionize a lot of things we are thinking about. We are definitely have a lot more services to offer in the pipelines, but one thing that we want to do under a regulatory framework, that's number one. Secondly, with a secure, not just from a technology perspective, but from an operation, compliance, and the whole insurance perspective. So when you're thinking about doing this, it's not just like for the younger generations who are very easy to download the app, log in, register, put money, transfer. And then we are thinking about broadly traditional financial institutions. They look at a lot of things. How your infrastructure, are you ISO compliant or SOC 2, etc. So they look at a lot of things, right? So these are the things that we are thinking about the whole business for the financial services.
And I think that's really critical, especially as we think about what you're talking about with resilience and infrastructure. That really matters from a regulatory perspective, and having a regulatory environment that enables that, and that's how you get the scaling with the major financial institutions. Is that reflected in what you've seen as well in working with the regulators here?
Definitely. the most important thing for continued stablecoin growth is clear and consistent regulatory frameworks from credible regulators globally. And we have been issuing a stablecoin regulated by the FSRA out of the ADGM since earlier this year. They released a new framework for fiat reference tokens or stablecoin just this week. And that type of clarity from the regulators isn't just important for us as the issuer, but for that whole ecosystem. And to your point that you mentioned earlier, just today we announced our partnership, and that Standard Charter would be supporting Paxos in the issuance and the different banking services behind Lift Dollar, which we're issuing out of the ADGM. And that type of, that caliber of financial institution partnering in the ecosystem, supporting regulated players like Paxos, enables all types of second order adoption and allows the ecosystem to really continue to thrive.
Completely agree, and especially when you think about the fact that financial services is one of the most regulated industries in the world. In order to have the major institutions participating, there has to be that regulatory certainty. And you obviously look across a lot of regions as well.
Yeah.
Are you also seeing the kind of criticality of that regulatory certainty? And we've spoken about this before as well, and the need for that in evolving and innovative industries to have that clarity of what the guidelines are.
Yeah, so Fuse is regulated here, FSRA, central bank, and some other places as well. So we're regulated for payments, brokering, broker dealer, and a custody as well. And UAE Central Bank also released a payment token framework, which is for a dirham-backed stablecoin. That's something else that we're looking at. And I think just in line with what we just said, right, to really make this successful as like the next layer of financial services infrastructure, you have to have regulations in each region or within each market, but not just as a standalone. There has to be cohesiveness across, right? So people can get a stable coin issued here and then transfer it or then off-ramp it in another market as seamlessly as possible, without fear of regulators or police or that kind of stuff, which does happen in several places.
100%, and I mean, you've obviously mentioned the announcement on the framework, which is critical, and it is market leading, and that we actually haven't seen clarity around stablecoin regulation from too many jurisdictions. So I wonder if you have any thoughts on this as well, because I know you sit and also look across, we were speaking earlier, the different jurisdictions that you've lived and worked in. What do you see as being those other kind of critical missing pieces for scaling globally of stablecoins?
Okay, actually, I see two things that we probably can do better than what we have done so far. Number one is actually, I think, on the regulatory framework. I think ADGM, UAE has done a great job. So that sets us a very good standard for people. For other countries, we are still developing, or actually, I would say, maybe modifying their existing laws. So that's number one thing. When you have a benchmark, you have a standards, you know how to operate. The second thing is actually to get some, I would say, connectivities in terms of technology. I think this is the thing that a lot of people think this is easy, but if you really dig into this can be beyond your, I would say, complexity. So we all know SWIFT network has been there for, I think, more than half a century or so, right? So that thing is to connecting to each individual banks, payment companies, etc., to really empower all the financial institutions, then to the retail, to the merchants, to use stable coins or to use other crypto means to make payments, etc., financial transactions. I think technology, we need to get further improvements. I mean, if you look at why technology is a gap, globally, we are looking at probably 80 million in terms of developers in the traditional Web 2 space. But Web 3, we are talking about only 50 to 60,000. How many universities have this major so far? I think mostly are self-taught, right? So that's the thing, I think the gap we need to fill in the next probably a decade or so before we really have a robust infrastructure talent pool to connect this.
Completely, and it's thinking about what's needed for those farther steps in the future, preparing for that next generation, the next evolution, not just where we're at right now.
Yeah.
So as we look to the future, if you could have anything on the wish list when it comes to stablecoins, because there has been a lot of exciting developments that have happened in the past couple of months. We'll start with you, a little bit more of a fun question. If you could have anything to make this industry scale, what would it be?
Look, I think we're super fortunate because we're in a region where our regulators sit with you at a table and they help you define a framework, or they ask for your help to define a framework that makes sense. So I don't have a wish list per se. I think also the market itself is driving it. You know, if you look at a typical payment transaction, it's 15 steps, right? And then the merchant or the end recipient has to wait for 3 days or 4 days or 5 days to receive the value, right? So across our part of the world, consumers, businesses are demanding this now. And we've seen a huge amount of growth coming from it. So I think probably the only wish that I can ask for is that we continue on this pace, have this momentum continue, because it's going incredibly fast, and I think this is where you want to be if you want to do something in the digital asset space.
Completely fair. But you mentioned obviously the institutional side of things, which is where you guys are looking. So maybe broadening out a little bit, not just here. What would you say is needed to bring in that institutional investment and also comfort, to bring it even further?
Yeah, I have to say I agree with Mo on this one. I mean, we are headed in the right direction here. And if more markets around the world can follow in the footsteps of what's happening here in the ADGM, where we're getting clear regulation, where we are getting forward-thinking banks moving into the space to provide infrastructure and to service regulated providers like Paxos. I mean, there already is amazing product market fit for stablecoins.
Yeah.
I mean, we are up here, and of all the things you can talk about in digital assets, nothing has as great a product market fit as stablecoins. I mean, just, if you think about our range of customers, we power a white label stablecoin that we issue for PayPal. We power stablecoin pay-ins infrastructure for Stripe so that they can accept pay-ins to their large merchants around the world. This type of activity is really a signal that we have amazing product market fit, and if we just continue down this path of banks following in the footsteps of Standard Chartered, of regulators following in the footsteps of FSRA, we are going to see trillions of dollars of stablecoins in the not distant future.
Heard it here first. Check back next year and we'll see where we're at. And what about you? So you mentioned obviously the things that we need to grow and build, and you always said that. So what are the use cases that you're really excited about in the stablecoin space?
Okay, so in terms of use case, just think about, I don't really want to think about just in terms of stablecoins. I know all my partners are talking about stablecoins, that's the panel it's about. My biggest dream is actually we won't even need to talk about stablecoins because everybody is using this as they used to. If you talk to the young people these days, like 15, 18 years old, either in emerging countries or somewhere in the US, they don't need to use the stablecoins. They will just transact as they used to. That's what they know about as money, to solve their major, whether it's a payment or it's to just a global transfers, remittance. They don't use that kind of words. They think this is the money. So I think if that's actually where we're looking at, I think digital money, I think that's what we're looking at in terms of the real adoptions. So payments is number one. I think that we have a lot of things that has been put into place for us to get this. Investments, as you mentioned, I think that's a huge. I think when I joined this industry about 4 years back, that was the kind of hype of NFT, which is non-fungible tokens. It's a terminology, don't bother that. But if you look at really what makes a difference, all these terminologies, is everything can be tokenized, or everything should be tokenized, no matter what, in the form of a dollar fiat or the AED, etc. So that's kind of things, if you think about broadly, doesn't have to be transacted. So if this is actually where we are going to, I think stablecoin should definitely serve a big purpose in terms of making sure the transactions is as smooth, number one, number two, as secure, number three, as compliant as possible.
Yeah. He makes a very good point, right? So I think if you look at the use case of payment, a user doesn't really care if it's a blockchain-based payment or not. They just want to be able to transfer value from one side to the other. For treasury management, I'm sure you have some ideas on why that may be different, but for a payment, people just want to transfer value as quickly and as simply as possible. So if you have a dollar or a local currency that's digitized, that just makes it so much easier.
And yeah, and agree. And I think that the sort of frictionless, the seamless integration is really critical. And actually, maybe if I could just come back to you for a minute, especially since you're looking at digital assets as a service, how are you looking at then embedding this within financial services in a seamless way so that people aren't thinking, oh, I'm using stablecoins or I'm doing this, but how are you making that kind of help that transition happen?
Yeah, so Fuse's DaaS platform first started with regards to investments, wealth and investments, and now we're focusing on payments and also now we have some different use cases coming up and really around payments and lending. The focus is on how do we take a stablecoin, which many people in this part of the world hold, and how do we create additional value on that. That can be credit, that can be lending, that can be transfers, individuals, businesses, all that kind of stuff. So many of the banks and the fintechs that we're working with are actually looking at enabling on-chain payments, on-chain lending, without necessarily having to implement blockchain technology themselves.
And I think that that's really critical as well because it's the connectivity of the ecosystem. That's where we see all of the partnerships. That's where we see the different players being able to contribute. And so maybe if we could come back to you, what other types of partnerships do you see as being integral in this space and the connectivity across other types of players in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think that, I've mentioned a lot the banks, and they're very important. And then you look kind of at two other kind of key areas of growth that we think about a lot. And one is, existing enterprise. And how are they using stablecoin either to operate their business, to offer to their customers, and then the other one is in developers. And so, I think the great thing about stablecoins is a lot of the amazing things that we'll eventually discover about stablecoins and this technology are like barely even just being used, just the surface being scratched, particularly on the programmability side, and making sure that, all developers out there that are building new products, new fintechs, the solutions and the products that we're going to use tomorrow are building it off of stablecoin infrastructure because it really is an amazing platform. And I love your point, which is that today we talk about stablecoin and it's part of like marketing ourselves as an industry as we're all collectively really disrupting the way that dollars have and fiat currency have been distributed. It's not a new asset, but the way it's being distributed is changing. And eventually, we won't be talking about it that way. We won't be talking about stable coins this, just like we don't, think necessarily like in the terms of the internet. We think about like all the applications on it, and that's just how we're all connected. And I think that that is, kind of an exciting place that we will arrive at fairly soon, where we just think of these as dollars, but in a more modern way and global way that they move and are distributed.
Fantastic. We only maybe have time for one last question, so I'll come to you next, picking up on that point that he mentioned then. If we could look 1 year ahead to 2025, what do you see as going to be the most kind of key developments throughout the next year? If we come all back next year, if we're still talking about this, where will we be?
I think, it's especially in the world, I think the stablecoin adoption will definitely rise up. If you look at what actually the key financial centers are ramping up, not only here, which is a very leading, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Japan. I think we're probably going to see something going on, Thailand as well. In Europe, I think there will be something, but I think they'll probably a slightly slower pace. Hopefully there's something coming out from the UK that's expect. US, I will probably put in the last to catch up. Yeah.
Well, you heard it here first. That was the wrap up, but I think it's very clear that this is the place to be for stablecoins, and also stablecoins will continue to take off. So thank you so much to my fantastic panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.